Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And the proceedings on this bill today are an absolute travesty of parliamentary accountability. That a major bill like this, with huge implications for civil rights and human rights in our society, our standing around the world, should be pushed through in a very short time this afternoon. I suspect we won't even be voting on most of the amendments. They haven't been subject to standalone debates. We're having, in effect, another second reading debate in order to accommodate those that have put forward amendments. And I do think that we should reflect on the role of this House in holding this government to account. I've added my name to a number of the amendments, particularly those drafted by my friend, the member for Streatham, and I pay tribute to her for the work she's done on this bill and the contribution that she's made this afternoon. At the moment, there is still going on the Mitting inquiry into undercover policing operations, which succeeded the Pitchford inquiry after the death of Pitchford. That inquiry was due to report in 2018. It has not even got into the second and third stages of its inquiries yet, and may well go on for several years more before it reports. It covers undercover policing since 1968, which I reflect is more or less covers my whole political life for that time. So I'm going to read with great interest the final report of the Mitting inquiry. But what's come out so far, and what has come out from those of us that have good friends in environmental groups, in human rights groups, in trade unions, and many other campaigns, is the sheer arrogance of police undercover operations that have infiltrated wholly legitimate and legal operations in order to disrupt them, spread negative information, and cause problems for them. If we live in a free and democratic society, obviously criminality is not acceptable. Obviously, policing is required to deal with criminality, but you don't deal with criminality by authorising criminality through undercover policing operations into those groups. And those of us that have had the honour of meeting people, particularly women, in a number of groups that have been infiltrated by the police, and the police have then knowingly formed liaisons, sexual liaisons with those women. Children have been given birth to as a result of it, and then often years later, the woman concerned finds out that she was completely duped, completely misled, and her life was ruined by an undercover police operation. Imagine what it feels like if you've been with what you thought was your life partner for several years and you discover they've been put there by the police in order to seduce you into giving information on actually legal activities done by environmental and other groups. Does this bill protect women from that in the future? I think we all know the answer to that, and I hope that at the very least the House of Lords is able to make some substantial amendments to this. But I'm disappointed that the College of Policing advice just come out is that it is not necessarily wrong for undercover officers to form sexual relations with people in order to gain information. This is the kind of world that we are about to approve of unless the amendments that have been put forward by my friend, the member for Walthamstow, and others are accepted by the government today. I will be brief, Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker, because I know there isn't much time and there's 11 more colleagues trying to speak before 20 past 3. The second area I want to refer to are the points made by my friend, the member for Streatham. This bill says that you cannot do anything to undermine the economic well-being of the country. Well, what does that actually mean? Does that mean, for example, that if dock workers decided to take strike action because they'd reached the end of the road on negotiations with their employer and therefore they were withdrawing their labour in order to force a settlement of their grievance, would they be acting against the economic interests of this country because it would obviously disrupt trade, or are they acting in the interests of themselves and their colleagues and other workers in trying to improve their economic well-being? There's a whole big debate about what is economic well-being and what is not. And for those of us that have seen the activities of undercover police operations in trade unions and the blacklisting of wholly legitimate trade union representatives who have spent 20 years and more being unable to work as electricians, as carpenters, as plumbers, because they've been blacklisted secretly by groups of employers when the police knew about it all along. Wholly illegal activities, and the need for the police to recognise what they've been doing is completely wrong is simply unacceptable. So I hope that we'll have a thought for the moment at the more than 1,000 groups that have been infiltrated by the police at some point over the past few years. 1,000 different groups have been infiltrated in some way. And those of us that have spent our lives campaigning for social justice, environmental sustainability, and against racism in any form, often wonder why there is apparently much less concern and much less involvement and much less attention paid to far-right racist organisations than there are to other people within our society. I think we need to know the answers to all of these questions, but I suspect we will not get them today. My friend, the member for Rhondda, has put forward an amendment which says that activities should in future be authorised only by the Prime Minister, and my friend for Streatham has also put forward amendments on the question of accountability. Accountability is absolutely the key to this. I wonder if ministers actually knew or know what was going on. I wonder if senior police officers always knew what was going on. I wonder how many different quasi-secret operations were being conducted in different police authorities around the country without the relevant police commander even knowing what is happening. And the inquiries into South Yorkshire, over Orgreave and of Hillsborough tend to indicate there is a lack of transparency in the way in which the police operate. The member for Halton, Price and Howden spoke very correctly about the whole issues of where we go to if we go down a road of ignoring human rights and civil justice within our society. He and I spent a lot of time campaigning to try and get British nationals and British residents released from Guantanamo Bay. It's a disgrace, the whole thing. The whole thing is extrajudicial in every conceivable way. Likewise, we were involved in extraordinary rendition of some form as this country and our government here. If we're to hold our heads up around the world as being supporters of human rights, of being signatories to the Universal Declaration, to the European Convention, and to our own Human Rights Act, then I think we need to look very carefully at ourselves and what this bill actually proposes to do today. And so I would hope that at the very least, when the Minister comes to reply, he will make it very clear whether the government is committed to continuing to support, recognise and work within the terms of the very historic and important Human Rights Act, or if once again he's going to be appealing to the backwoods people in the Tory party who sort of see human rights as somehow or other a term of abuse and they want to repeal that act or reduce its power and its importance. I think these things are very important. I regret, Madam Deputy Speaker, we've had such a very short time for this crucial debate today, but I'm moved by the hundreds of people that have been in touch with MPs about this, the dozens of organisations, not necessarily all protest groups or on the left, but covering peace, covering civil liberties, covering human rights, that are very, very concerned about this bill. These are people that think very seriously about these matters, and we would do well to listen to them, rather than ramming this thing through in a few hours on a Thursday afternoon and imagining that will be job done. It won't be, because it will all get back in the courts at points in the future. The Metting inquiry report will come out at some point in the future, and many of us will continue our vigilance in order to protect civil liberties and human rights in our society, in our country, and the civil liberties and rights of those who work in the police and other security services. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.